Hello and welcome to Shed Life Oz. My name's Jason and this is my shed. I've been living and working out of this industrial space for the past 3 years, and prior to that I was incarcerated for a little over 20 years. So it's been a bit of a change, but today's discourse is an opinion piece called Who's Conning Who? And I want to talk about education and training within the prison system. And I think prison's probably a microcosm of the broader society, so some of the observations probably will apply to what's happening in society. People have an expectation that prison's a place of rehabilitation and of breaking people down and rebuilding them so that they're useful members of our society. And this is the rhetoric that the government would have us buy into with regard to their prison systems. Well, they're not prison systems anymore, they're called correctional centres. And prisons is probably more accurate. They're a place for housing or storing people. They're overcrowded, understaffed, and on that basis they're fairly dysfunctional at a whole heap of levels. It's an expensive exercise locking people up and keeping them locked up for extended periods of time. Upon my release in 2021, it was costing $104,000 a year to maintain a prisoner in a prison in Queensland. It's a lot of money. And that's just the basic day-to-day. That's not if they're sick or I don't know. But anyway, in the prison system there is opportunities obviously to partake in education and rehabilitation. Once arrested, you're assessed for what your needs are, and the sentence management department, maybe even the courts, will determine what courses you are required to do to be eligible for early release. And these are anger management programs, drug and alcohol programs, largely behavioural programs designed to help understand behavioural issues that an inmate might have and give him strategy, or him and or her strategies to deal with these behavioural issues once released. And I've partaken in, I don't know, too many to remember really, not a great deal, but and their strategies aren't bad, like they're the best courses. These are the best strategies available to the government at the time, so they're applying best practice with these courses in the prison system. How well they're received is up to the individual, and that's where the problem lies. Prisoners do courses because they want their parole. They don't do their courses generally because they want to change their behaviours. They may lament their behaviours while they're sitting in prison, but upon release they're back to old tricks fairly quickly, quite often. But you can't detain people for what they may do. So it's a bit of a catch-22 with those sort of courses. They need to happen, and they are useful if you want to take on board what's being offered, but most people aren't interested in taking on board. They're just interested in getting the certificate so that they can get their parole and get the hell out of there. Other than that, there are educational and self-improvement courses along the lines of TAFE and Other recognised training providers, there's all sorts of things from trade, Certificate 1, Certificate 2, art. University is available, numeracy and literacy is available. Quite often with the vocational stuff, it's probably rorted fairly hard. In the prison system, but the prison I was last in, I was in 4 separate prisons during my time. But in the last prison I was in, which was the same pattern in every prison I was in, vocational courses were offered, and it might be bricklaying course, a Cert 2 in construction or something. And people sign up for these courses not because they have a great interest in construction or they particularly want to learn construction, but they sign up to them because they're locked into a 50-man unit day in, day out for months on end and have no possibility of getting out of that unit through the day. So to enrol in an educational course will get you to the workshops for 3 or 4 hours twice a week for a month. And that will allow you to catch up with people you haven't seen for a while from other parts of the jails, and that's what it provides for a great many of the people who enrol in these courses, just an escape from their immediate environment to break the monotony of their life. And on that basis, it serves an important purpose. You go crazy sitting in those bloody units. They're 50-man units. You might have more, they're built for 50 men, they might have 60 in them maybe. They generally don't overload those units because they're at the threshold of what can be managed anyway. They're violent places, they're noisy places, they're dirty places. To be able to get out away from them. But also, going to a course, you might be able to, if you've got a substance abuse problem, you might be able to contact someone from the other side of the jail who's doing the same course and alleviate your needs with a little bit of substance. So, great place for that too. The facilitators of these courses, TAFE is one of the main providers for courses within the prison system, and the TAFE providers are fairly pragmatic after all the time that they've been in the prison. They understand the reality of why people are there, but they're paid by the amount of people that complete their course. So you go, you sign up, and if you don't want to turn up, don't turn up, because they're going to tick you off generally because they're paid by attendance. So the TAFE facilitators will generally tick you off if you turn up for 2 minutes and disappear because they like to be paid for their effort. And if they start the course of 16 people, it's no good going down to 2 people within the first 3 days. They want the month filled with attendees, so they put them in their book. So they just mark people there, and as long as they're not disrupting and doing damage, they don't care. All the TAFE courses these days are competency based, which is interesting. Years ago we used to get grades for our examinations. Now during the late 80s when I was finishing my apprenticeship, it was just changing to J and M grades. A J was a pass and an M was a fail, and we used to refer to it as joy or misery. And that's pretty well what it still is these days. It's all competency based. It's not actually graded. So anyone that will attend a TAFE course, the TAFE courses that I attended, I didn't attend very many because they didn't offer very much of what I was after. TAFE courses I attended, they would sit down at the end of the course, get everyone that signed up for the course there on the last day and go through all the answers on the exams and fill them in on the blackboard. And if they couldn't write them in themselves, they would write them in for them, the answers, and everyone passed. So regardless of whether the people had competency or any knowledge of the subject at all, everyone received a certificate to say that they were competent in this discipline. It's fraudulent. Like the TAFE bloke's committing fraud because he wants to get paid, the crim's committing fraud because he wants to get out of the unit, and he wants that certificate to present to the parole board when his time comes for his early release to say, hey, look at me, haven't I been a good little doobie, and I've done this for myself and I'm improved and I'm ready to go back into the community. The parole board, well, I'm not sure how aware they are of the nature of this, but the prison system, the management of the system are aware, I would assume. They can't not be. It's not their corner of the world to be commenting on this sort of thing. Prisoners will take every opportunity to take any advantage that they can find, any rort and shortcut. So that's human nature in that, and anything that is run or conducted for the benefit of prisoners is generally destroyed by the prisoners for taking advantage of it. Anything good is rorted to the nth degree till it's no longer viable to support that behaviour. But yeah, so who's conning who? Well, I'm not sure. I know the bloody employers, they probably don't get conned anymore because you see enough people turn up with these bodgy certificates. And even if the person who's done the certificate knows the work and was serious about it, his certificate's the same as the bloke that doesn't know the work. So you see enough dud certificates, that certificate is devalued and worth nothing. The public's definitely being conned because they think they're paying bloody good taxpayer money to the TAFE and the government to rehabilitate these men and ladies and get positive outcomes for their dollar. But this is across the board. Very early on in the piece, probably 2001, 2002, I signed up for an art course, and it was a drawing course, and it was the same. Like he was just a service provider, he didn't care. Put your name down, come back in 3 weeks and get your certificate. Everyone understands that this is how it works, and it's no point trying to save the world with this sort of thing. I don't know how you vet it so that the right people are turning up, because everyone presents as the right people. Like, you can't say no to people for wanting to be educated, and they all present as wanting to be educated up until the point the education starts, and they decide they don't want to be. While I was incarcerated, I did a lot of different courses, I guess, but probably my biggest achievement was to do a fine arts degree, and to study a bachelor's degree in prison was a challenging process. I started that in a prison down in southeast Queensland that was privately managed at the time, and that was through Curtin University in Western Australia. It was a JETA program, Justice and Equity Through Art. So it was a program that was set up for inmates to study arts because they had a belief that arts brings out the best in people and connects in a way that a lot of other programs don't. I'm a supporter of it. I encourage people in prison to do art if I could. Supported them where I can. Tried to encourage people to do the JETA program, and to that end had several friends that I encouraged to enrol, and they enrolled and they rorted it because that was their nature. Like, it allowed them to buy art materials they couldn't get otherwise. It allowed them to stop working and study. So they failed in their attempt to do their studies because after 6 or 12 months of not producing the work, they're shit canned, obviously. But their motivation was, oh look, Jason's got all this really nice art gear that he's bought himself because he's allowed to buy it because he needs it for his course. And I had good art materials. I had interesting books that I was buying on all sorts of art, and fairly happy studying because it took me away from my prison environment. It gave me a focus outside the fences and the walls. So education is important in prison and it's doable, but very, very few people manage to do university within the prison system because it was really challenging at a whole heap of levels. It took me 8 years to do a 3-year degree. I started at the Southern Prison at Ipswich. I was there for probably, I was there for a little over 3 years, but I was studying for probably the last year or so there. I moved to Townsville Prison, and it took me a little while to settle in there before I get education officers to understand what I was doing, because everyone's pretty jaded with people rorting all the time. So to get them over the line to believe in me enough to support me in my studies, because you need support. You need people to send paperwork. I used to send everything to Western Australia. Like, just bundle it all up and mail it off and let them sort it out at the other end. And like, I had a laptop that I used to pay rent on. There was no internet. It was just a word processing device, and my course material would come on CD-ROM and hard copy, and I would sit there and do that sort of work in that way. And yeah, to get the staff online was always a challenge because they'd been conned and they'd believed and trusted and been burnt often enough that they were jaded, and that's repeat. But I'd end up find myself in a unit where I couldn't study because behavioural issue or luck, or like, it's a matter of saying which unit do you want to live in to two people. Like, I walked into a new jail and I said, which unit, you want that one or that one? And I picked the left one, and my mate picked the right one. And I walked into the worst unit in the jail, and it was just a trap for 12 months. Like, it was chaos. Just a violent, hectic, just every day it was, humanity's funny. Humanity's a comedy, the stupidity of people and what they'll get up to, out of sheer boredom, and the levels of violence that aren't particularly warranted, but things escalate quickly. So yeah, that was just me picking left instead of right, put me into that space. And there I sat, and I said, you sit there and you watch humanity, and sometimes you enjoy the show and sometimes you shake your head and wonder, what the hell is this shit? This is our future. But yeah, so from that jail I was there for about 2 years, and then I moved to a northern jail, bit west of Cairns, and that's where my family are up here, so it was where I started, it's where I finished. And finished my studies here too, but again, I worked for a while because I was self-funded, so I'd work in the industries, make some money, try to run my studies beside my working. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. Stop working and study full time, run out of money, go back to work. You're fed, you're roofed, So it's just a matter of making it work. But yeah, I had really supportive staff up here. But again, a myriad of staff, like education officers change fairly regularly, so you're getting a different service. Some were really good, some not so good. Other staff decide they don't like what you're doing, that you should be being punished for being a wicked person. So you're 14, 16 years into a 20-year bottom and they've decided they're going to take it on themselves to make your life difficult because they've got a social agenda that they're there to punish all the prisoners for the sake of all those poor people outside that expect this to happen. And good on them, that's their agenda, and they usually fall over with it fairly quickly because it's not very well supported by other staff members. There's a clique that'll come into it for a while, and there is violence against inmates generally as a reactionary and extreme. But that's just jail. We live it, and we get out. They call it corrections. Well, it's prison. Corrections is a misnomer. Any corrections that go on in there is done by the individual, and quite often as young people come in there, they quickly learn to participate in the game. If they didn't come in with contacts and drug habits, there are a fair chance of leaving with a whole heap of contacts and a horrible drug habit, because that's what's going on. It's boring. The interesting, exciting people are the ones that are staying because they're running around buzzing their bloody head off and seem to be having a ball up until the time they're sick and can no longer get stoned again. So, but yeah, we were talking about education and how, what time have we got? We were talking about education and how it failed. Well, how it's a con. And it is, disappointingly. I just don't know. I think in the broader community it's the same. Like, you pay a service provider for a truck ticket. My ex-partner managed to get herself an excavator ticket through a work provider. Because she wanted to drive excavators because there's good money on the mines and good on her for having aspiration. And it turned out she's shit at it, but she got a ticket anyway. Because it's a skill set. Some people have that skill set and other people don't. It's not something... I can drive hydraulic machinery, but I'll never be a good operator because I haven't got the feel for it. But I haven't got a ticket. She's got a ticket that says she can do it. I have a relation that has a heavy rigid ticket, and she's terrified of trucks, but she managed to... They just give these tickets out because they're paid to give them out, and it's bullshit. And it's the service providers that are conning everyone, really. They're conning their client, they're conning the employers, and they're conning the customers. And that's who's conning who, I guess. We're all in it a little bit, but the service providers seem to be the ones taking the money home. And on that cheery thought,